Bye, Sam.
Sam three's a crowd. No, just kidding.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of Marketing Cheat Codes. My name is Ed Brialt, CMO at Aprimo, and I'm here with a very special guest. And you've got lots of credentials here. We're going to unpack those. Amanda McGuckin Hager from Austin. Amanda, how are you?
I'm doing well, Ed. How are you?
I'm doing great. Like I mentioned earlier, you're not hard to research. You've been putting a lot of awesome content out there in the world of the tech space, marketing. We're going to be today. We'll be talking about data analytics. We'll be talking about the rise of first-party data, which I think is paramount right now. We must do that. It's part of a marketer's responsibilities now is to look at our first-party data as a major asset of the company. So now you've got some pretty cool achievements. Austin's top 10 B2B Lead Gen Marketers, the top 200 voices in big data and analytics. I want to talk about big data too. The top 50 Austin techies to follow on Twitter, and Marketing Sherpas, which is an awesome place for great content. You've got the top 3 inbound case studies in 2014. So how did you get all those credentials? What's your origin story? Where did you get started? Where does Amanda get started in her career?
Well, funny enough, Amanda got started about 9 years old at my kitchen table doing my first direct mail campaign, direct to consumer, B2C mail campaign, working with my mom who was in real estate. And this was before the internet, and things were very different then. So we did a lot of gluing pictures to flyers and then stuffing envelopes and mailing them out. That's how we did real estate back then.
Nice.
I grew up in a family. My mom was obviously in real estate. My father was a town dentist. It was a small town. And a lot of what I learned from them is that your network is everything. All of their business came through their network. And that's really how I've gotten all these accolades, just growing and expanding my network. I started in marketing proper, selling digital advertising, so a little bit of sales, but in that marketing space. I went on to an MDR or BDR role. And
Wow. Yeah.
Even back then, those teams sort of swing between marketing and sales. And when I was on the marketing team, I loved it. When my BDR team swung over to sales and suddenly we had quotas and activities, levels that we had to hit every day, I was like, this is less fun for me. I don't love this as much. And so I realized at that point, I really want to be in marketing. That's what I want to do. So I just, with intention, took every job that I could, as sort of as directly as possible. Like, I know I need to do email. So I went to Dell and did email for a year and a half. And that has served me so well. I know that I need to know some SEO. I had an employer that certified me in SEO. It's well outdated now and hardly applicable, but at that point, it was great. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Tons of respect for being an SDR, BDR in your career. I was at one point as well. That is the fine line between blood, sweat, tears, and money.
Yes. That is such a great way to put it.
Yeah. You're anybody's ability to think about the mental toughness you've forged being in a BDR or an SDR. It's like you have an objective and you're going to figure out a way to get there. And I think the magic of that role, now that you have that as a marketing leader and strategist, how important messaging, positioning, tying value proposition to somebody's problem at the right point in time, getting those things aligned, figured out as an organization, is the difference between growth and going out of business.
Yeah, you're so right. I think that experience gave me, as you mentioned, just a lot of resilience, right? You get told no a lot and you build a thicker skin. And like you said, it also is very creative. You have to find your path and you try different things and see what works and keep iterating on your message, your playbooks, et cetera. And I think that experience gave me the understanding of what a good lead is. And, most of my career, I focused on demand generation, and I've done that with intention. I thought, well, I don't want to close deals. I don't want to be in sales, but if I'm constantly feeding the sales team, I will always have a job. I will have job security for the rest of my career. This is something I can focus on. And having been a BDR and hearing from sales, that was a good lead or that wasn't a good lead, and here's why, was really invaluable to setting me up for a really great career in demand gen.
Absolutely. Yeah. The tip of the spear for sales is marketing and demand generation. Marketing is the leading indicator of sales. Sales is the leading indicator of customer experience. You've got to have a very strong front end marketing engine to be a growth organization. It's a great place to be. It's a hard place to be because
it can be hard.
The word generation means you need to create something from possibly nothing, right? It's not like you're being fed or you're being you're servicing demand. You're generating.
That's the fun part. That's the part I love.
Yeah, that's the magic of marketing, right? It's the quantitative, qualitative, left brain, right brain, art, science, those sorts of things. Understanding an audience, building an audience, getting in front of that audience, having empathy for that audience, creating that value exchange with that audience. And now this is marketing cheat codes, and one of the things we want to talk today about, you've got some cheat codes that you brought today. We want to get to those. Before we do, though, marketing cheat codes, we like to ask you a little bit about if you had any history or ever played video games, or do you have any video game stories for us?
I don't play video games myself, but I have 2 adult children that play a lot of video games. In my 20s, I played a lot of Duke Nukem.
Nice.
That dates me.
Yeah. Me too.
It was really fun, though. I enjoyed it. Lately, I play a lot of Words with Friends. I don't know if that counts as a video game, but that's what I play.
That's awesome. So let's talk about one of your cheat codes you brought here today, the rise of first-party data. At one point in time, we didn't have enough data. Then we had too much data. Then we had like the 4 V's of data: volume, variety, velocity, veracity of data. And now there's like all this intent data out there. There's this data available on third-party networks. There's a lot of changes going on, regulations, privacy. Why is owning your data, your first-party data, so important now with a marketing organization to run the business properly?
It's funny. I started inbound marketing 10 or 12 years ago. And at the time, the play that we did was build the database with the ideal prospect, who you think is the ideal prospect, as much as you could, and then nurture that database so that when it became the buying cycle of those prospects, you were top of mind. Your company was top of mind. And then they would come inbound, right? That was, in short, it's a lot more complex than that. But as a quick executive summary, that's what it was. Here we are, today, and we have new privacy regulations, right? We have GDPR in Europe. We have, PIPL in China, if any companies do business in China. We have California that has its own privacy. Even I think it's West Virginia or Virginia. All these states are coming up with their own data privacy laws. You have Canada as well. So how does a company that does business, in the United States, even globally, manage compliance with all of these things? It's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit. And all those things come back to, in my mind. I failed to mention, we have the depreciation of third-party cookies, which is coming down the road too, right? So what these external pressures, I think, just come back to that original strategy of growing your database, right? Which we now know is first-party data. And we're sort of back where we started, of always be growing your database. How do you do it? How do you get there? The cheat code, if you will, is, I believe, content, right? Like you mentioned, at the value exchange, you're exchanging something of value for permission to email that person in the future. And that content has to be valuable, right? It has to be valuable to them, or why would I, why would I submit to your emails every week if it's not relevant or valuable to me? So, yeah, I think more and more marketers are going to be looking at how do you grow your database? How do you grow first party data?
One of the things that I've heard Nick Barber of Forrester talk about, which is data and content together.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have 10 pieces of data and 10 pieces of content, you effectively have 100 permutations of an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that data and content working together are so important?
In my mind, I can only assume what he's talking about is the personalization and to
Absolutely.
to your point of value exchange, right? And the more personalized I can get and the more targeted I can get, the more valuable my content will be to you. At least that's what I hope. I've worked in a lot of large companies, public companies, Dell, Rackspace, SolarWinds. But I've also been in a lot of startups, and in startups, efficiency is really important, and getting sort of complex in those permutations, I tend to stay away from. I do try and keep it simple. I'm always implementing the cost benefit analysis, right? Like, what's it going to cost me in time or money and effort, and what's the benefit I'm going to get out of it? So, I hate to be so trite, but the 80-20 rule comes into play there too. I don't want to go out and do 100 permutations personally as a marketer. If I had large teams and we had the budget and that was the way to do it, but if I could do 20 that I think will apply to most of the people in my database, then that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And I think where that scale curve comes, we look at technology to fill some of those gaps, machine learning, AI, potentially filling those gaps, looking at the data, looking at the modularity of content to actually create some experiences. If we have technology that can, reference the data, knows who we're talking to, could potentially generate a dynamic experience. That's one way, or some key areas of real activity that can be found with that marriage of tech and content and the data.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember at Dell, over a decade ago, we were doing, this might have been 15 years ago, dynamic content was fairly new. And so we were trying our hand at dynamic emails. And I remember it being a bear of a project. Like, this is hard. This is complex. Like, trying to write content for all those, like you say, permutations and variables. And it was, I think it's gotten a lot easier since then.
Yeah. So let's bring it to some of the hot topics in your world right now, some of your burning platform items. I know we talked about the rise of first-party data. What are some of the other things that you're really passionate about, projects you're working on that are moving your activities, your business forward?
Well, currently I'm a consultant, and so I have, 5 or 6 clients that I'm working with, and I love this. I love this work because I get to see all these different market problems and look at all these different variables that impact, and goals and budgets. And it's quite fun. Some of my clients were doing a lot of planning. It's November right now. And so we're looking at H1 planning. And that is one of my favorite things to do. This is kind of like the Tetris game, if you will, for me. It's taking all these different pieces and parts and how do you fit it all together to hit the objectives. So I'm doing that with a couple clients right now, and it's also very different, but it's something I really love.
That's all. Can we double click on that? Yeah, because right now planning is one of my favorite topics to talk about. There's annual, there's rolling, we're never done planning.
Right.
When you think about planning, we talked about first party data, of course, but then content. When you think about content planning, what are some of when we're in the strategy phases, content's in the equation, what are folks thinking about? Are they putting their audiences at the center of that planning and developing content strategies from a content planning standpoint? what are some of your clients doing in terms of practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I call it content pillars. Some people call it content anchors. But I do mostly quarterly planning, sometimes half planning and annual planning, but quarterly is the execution, just like the financial schedules of most companies. That financial schedule sets the sales goals, and those sales goals set the marketing goals, right? So, generally speaking, I like to have one, maybe two content pillars or, content anchors. Some call them lead magnets, whatever you want to call them. And it just depends. Each company is a little bit different. Sometimes they are doing their own research and publishing reports. Sometimes they are, some of my clients are looking at purchasing rights to analyst reports to serve. If you have the budget, that's an easy way to get some nice content in the market. One of my clients just did an amazing research with a third party and published a really, really great report that, as any of these pillars, they can spin off into blogs and social media content and infographics and emails and, podcasts, and it runs the gamut. But yeah, that's mostly research reports. Some are doing some white papers and thought leadership type things from their own perspective. I think you have to be pretty mature as an organization to be able to say, this is what we see going on in the market, and this is our perspective on it, and
Absolutely.
to have it really resonate.
Yeah. So. I mean, absolutely. Being a thought leader, owning ideas, you've got to be producing content of value. You have to be discoverable. And I mean, that's just one of the it's very difficult, of course, to get there, to be established as a thought leader, but there's so much staying power. Mm-hmm. Once you get to that and people consume your ideas, you're the place to go. That's where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And anything that brings value to the market, right? Like, I know in the past, I'm not doing them now, but in the past we've done some really successful programs have been how-to guides. We looked at the big data company. We looked at how we would approach a new big data project with a client. And then we captured that into how to do a big data project, right? You might not be working with us to do it, and that's okay. Here's how you do it. And it was part how-to guide, part template. And the beauty of that was that if anyone downloaded it, we knew they had a big data project going on.
Right.
We also knew that 50% of big data projects failed. So if and when they were successful, great, we helped them get there. If the project failed by chance, well, hey, we're top of mind, and hopefully they come into us for some help. So
that's brilliant that you got really there you knew it. You knew the opportunity was there, and you were there at that moment of need and offered that value exchange.
Yeah, that one was a good one. That was fun.
Absolutely. Well, Amanda, thanks for coming on the show today. Thank you for dropping your cheat code. Where do folks get in touch with you?
That's a great question. I'm on LinkedIn. They can find me there. I was very, very early on the day that they released custom URLs. And so my LinkedIn address is Amanda. It's literally Amanda. It's linkedin.com/in/Amanda. So people can find me there.
That's what you get for being a first mover.
That's right.
Awesome. Amanda, thank you for sharing all your cheat codes today.
Thank you, Ed. It was so nice to meet you. It was a lot of fun.
Cheers.